Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Mentoring Summit India 2024. We are thrilled to have such a diverse and talented group of individuals gather here today, united by a common purpose to empower, inspire, and transform the lives of those we mentor. This summit offers a wonderful opportunity to learn, connect, share valuable insights about the future of mentoring. Thank you for being here. I look forward to an enriching and rewarding experience with you all. And our first session, From Insight to Impact, Designing Mentoring Programs That Work, backed by research, will explore how to create impactful, evidence-based mentoring programs. Leading this session are two outstanding experts in the field, Dvitya Raghavan and Dr. Mark Eddy. Dvitya Raghavan is an Associate Director of Research and Evaluations at Mentor Together. She brings nearly 15 years of experience in education. Dvitya has been involved in large-scale evaluation studies, and currently at Mentor Together, she's focused on using data and digital mentoring to expand workforce opportunities for women. Dr. Mark, a professor and prevention scientist at the University of Texas at Austin, he specialized in youth and family interventions, partnering with various systems to design programs for at-risk communities. I welcome Dvitya and Mark.
Actually, hang on. Right. Awesome. You can hear me fine, right? Awesome. Lovely. Welcome, everyone, to a session on designing mentoring programs. What we're going to be, just as a brief 30 seconds about what we're going to do today. Mark and I are both deeply invested in research around mentoring, and we think a lot about using research and evidence from research in designing programs that are more effective and continuing to sort of reconceptualize programs that have already been designed with emerging evidence to make them more effective. So we'll be talking broadly about, this is broadly what we'll be speaking about, and both of us will come to it from an example that we're aware of deeply and we've worked with. So yeah, let's go for it. Awesome. So essentially, there are, let's say, two ways of thinking about, or two theories that are used in thinking about how to design a program or to reconceptualize a program. Broadly, they're called developmental theory and change theory. Mark is an expert at the developmental theory piece of this, and he will talk us through what that means. Essentially, this is like us thinking about how do problems develop that you want to resolve, what in the developmental journey of a young person or of an individual contributes to the issue or the problems that we are trying to solve through our programs. And then there's change theory, where we are really trying to think about how is the program going to impact developmental theory, right? So this is broadly what we'll speak about. So Mark will just take us through developmental theory a little bit. Is that okay, Mark? You can also do it from there if you want.
All right, good morning. So when I'm involved in developing programs, I really do think it is very important to think about both of these aspects, because the way that something develops in some ways may have nothing to do with how you change the issue at hand. It usually has something to do with it, but how you get there may be different than how you leave that spot. So in terms of developmental theory, when I am beginning to think about a program, I try to put together as much information as I can about what is the target problem, what's the issue that we're trying to solve, and then what do we know in different sectors about how that problem develops. So I would first go to research literature and see what I could find. Then I would talk to people who have wisdom about that problem and put together their knowledge. I would, if we're focusing on youth, I would want to talk to youth about how they think about things. So practitioners, youth, scientists, and then talk to policymakers and see what they think. So I really do try to take a multiple point of view perspective on ideas about how a given problem develops. And obviously some of those ideas that will come to the table are quite idiosyncratic or anecdotal in nature, and other information that comes to the table will be, based more on, what has come out of the field in terms of science. So, but the key issue of both of these, in all of these things, is to really try to identify risk factors, things that increase the likelihood that some problem is going to develop, like not getting a job or getting involved in crime or something like that, and then protective factors that help decrease the likelihood that those things are going to happen. And so I'm going to just talk briefly about a specific developmental theory called social development theory that underlies a program that I've been researching now for the last 20 years. And there are 3 different theories that are relevant to this social development theory: social control theory, social learning theory, and differential association theory. So each of these theories were informed by research evidence. And in social control theory, the idea is that strong bonds between a youth and pro-social adults is quite important in terms of promoting positive behaviors, and that part of those bonds, if they are developed well between an adult and a youth, then also become a bond between that youth and institutions that those adults are connected to, whether that's the school setting or religious setting or whatever. A social learning theory idea is that we all are thinking beings, but we all are also behaving beings, and that we are responsive to the rewards and the punishments that we receive in our lives, and that also helps lead us to have certain sets of behaviors. And so thinking about bonds, which is cognitions, thinking about behaviors and relationships and the kind of behaviors that happen within relationships is important in this model. And then differential association theory is the idea that your behavior is influenced by the people around you, by your peers, by adults. And so if you spend a lot of time with peers who are getting into a lot of trouble, it's likely that you also are going to get in a lot of trouble. If you're spending time with kids who are doing more positive things, then you probably will be doing more positive things yourself. So those 3 theories are underlying this developmental theory that I'm going to just introduce. Oh, okay. And so anyway, those 3 theories, I guess the slides maybe come up later where I'll talk about what the social development theory is, or maybe those are ones that, yeah, that's fine. Okay, let's go to the next, yeah. And so then the change theory is the idea that you, given everything that you learn that's out there from different sources of wisdom, youth, practitioners, researchers, other areas of importance to you, bring all that wisdom to the table, and then make a set of hypotheses about how you think the problem that you're interested in might change. And if you frame it that way, I think that doing X, Y, and Z is going to lead to a change. And as we develop this program and then launch the program, that's what we're looking for is that kind of the driving force behind this program being effective. So when in the last session, when I was talking about kind of desiring that mentoring programs that have a focus on specific outcomes, not just developing a solid relationship between an adult and a youth, for example, but also desiring to have some very specific things that happen out of that. Those specific things that you do become ideas or hypotheses that you think, if I do this, it will lead to that, right? And so then when you do, if you do get involved with program evaluation or more a sophisticated kind of research, then those are the things that you test. And so anyway, the bottom line is if you have ideas about how something develops and you have ideas about how something might change, it then gives you a firm base to be able to think about what you see when a youth comes through your program and things work out or they don't work out. And so that having that knowledge base is important. And again, I think developing that from sources of wisdom, not only your own wisdom, but the wisdom of the people that you're going to be working with, the wisdom of people who've worked with those people before, and then any wisdom that's out there in the literature. So I've used this process pretty in a useful way over the years, and I'll give you an example. So many years ago, I was invited to work with a prison system in the United States at a state level. And where we started was with interviews of parents who were in prison, because this was a parenting program. Then we did many interviews with the caregivers of their children and what that experience was like. We interviewed their children. I interviewed all the people across my entire state who actually worked with parents in prison. And then I interviewed people around the country who were scientists and practitioners who were working with parents in prison. And so I brought all that information to the table and to my team, and that was our starting place.
So we've just laid out two theoretical framings for how to design programs, and we'll now jump into a couple of examples. One program, like Mark was saying, that he's been involved with for 2 decades, and then which is set in the US. And then we'll move to Mentor to Go, which is Mentor Together's digital mentoring program set in India, and try to understand what does developmental theory, change theory, all of these, what do these things mean for practitioners thinking about designing a mentoring program, right? It's all well and good, we must listen to research, etc. But what does that look like for someone who's trying to design a program? So that's what we'll look at. Should we start with you, Mark, with Friends of Children? Okay. You could actually just do it from here.
All right, so the Friends of the Children program is a professional youth mentoring program that works with children who are identified as having difficulties in kindergarten, 5 or 6 years old, and they commit to providing a mentor to that child for 12 years until they graduate from high school, which is typically age of 17 or 18 in the United States. And so the goals of the program are to ultimately promote either education, employment, or enlistment, because those are the three, enlistment and military, so those are the three kind of main places for work that people can end up in the United States, and to prevent involvement in child protective services, in juvenile justice, and also to prevent teen parenthood. So these are all these issues of setting yourself up for employment, and graduating from high school in the United States helps you to do that. So for example, in the state of Texas, where I live right now, to be a plumber in the state of Texas, you have to have a high school degree. And so if you don't think about that, and being a plumber in the United States is a well-paying job, you can earn up to $100,000 a year being a plumber. You don't have to have a high school degree to go to university in the United States, but you do need a high school degree if you want to go to a better university in the United States. So anyway, you do have to think about these things. But in this program, the idea is that the inputs into this model are selecting children that are appropriate for the program. And so to have this program work, you need to have the ability to actually meet with this child every week, and so you have to have a way to connect with this kid, right? And you have to have the support of the caregivers, and they try to select children who are either quite depressed and withdrawn, or children who are really acting out in school. And so it's either side of that equation. And they select half boys and half girls every year when they select new people. But anyway, and their kids are impacted by adversity, so they might be already involved with the child welfare system. They likely are poor. Anyway, the other input is that there's this mentoring relationship that starts at age 6 and goes to age 18. And it's a one-on-one relationship, but you're in the context in that relationship of a community of other mentors and children. So, for example, in Portland, Oregon, there's something like 400 children that are being mentored, and there's something like 80 mentors. And so they're part of this community, and they do get together and do activities together, but they begin when kids are quite young. And so by the time you're 18, you've then spent this whole time getting to know other kids that are also from your community, and originally were having trouble, but you're also with all of these adults who are there just to be supportive, pro-social adults. So it's a good, solid community. So those are the inputs. Then during the 12 years, the idea is there's an individual planning approach that the mentor gives to the child that is responsive to their needs, that is intended to promote their strengths and interests and to build connections between them and other adults in the community, so build their social capital. And the focus of this program until recently was solely on the child, but in the last few years, they finally and thankfully decided to be focusing also now on a broad scale on family and community. So we have those three things, but their approach, like a lot of mentoring approaches in the United States, has predominantly been on child over the years, but they're moving out in the social developmental model, such as Urie Bronfenbrenner's model that was mentioned today. The immediate outcome areas are improved social, emotional, and life skill development, learning and education, improvements, health and well-being, and community involvement and belonging. And all of advances in those areas are intended to lead to these long-term outcomes. So this is an example of a theory of change that the Friends of the Children model has. And they developed this model by initially an idea that the founder had based on his own life. And then he had a close friend who was a psychologist who brought his experience being a psychologist working with children in juvenile justice. And then together, they worked with researchers to identify what do we know about what is the best way that we could help children who are in difficult circumstances in early childhood to have better outcomes in young adulthood. And so they did a big literature review, and they brought to the table that research literature, their own feelings about what they needed to do, and then feelings and ideas that came from other people, as I mentioned. So that's what produced this. And so the program elements are serve vulnerable children, create and sustain one-on-one relationships, commit for the long term. And then the unique part of this in the US, although there are a few other programs like this in the world, including one in Finland, is that they do hire mentors to work full-time. And so the mentors work with 8 kids at a time, and they are to commit 4 hours a week to each child. And the idea is that you meet with the child at least a few hours a week, and then with the other amount of time, you're either talking to their caregivers, talking to their teachers, or trying to advocate for them in some way in the community. So This program has spread to about 40 places in the U.S., and some of the more recent sites are on tribal lands. So within the United States, we have multiple indigenous nations that have been interested in this model. So a new one, I just met somebody the other day in a meeting, and she was from South Dakota, and they have a new site there. And so a key thing that they watch for is not overloading their mentors, so having a caseload that's manageable, and having that mentor be present in the community, be present in the child's school, get to know what's going on in their life, and be connected to all the other adults. And the idea is to create this social scaffolding of adults that is supporting the child, because the mentor alone cannot do that, but by having the mentor be connected to teachers, caregivers, etc., each of those people play important roles in the life of a child. Mentor just is one of those roles. And then a lot of the kids that they work with really would not have the opportunity to have some of the experiences they do without having the mentor present. And then they have had a strong commitment from the beginning to evaluate their program. So that eventually led to them connecting with me and us starting this, what's called a randomized control trial, where we recruited about 300 kids and their caregivers when they were 6 that were eligible for the program, and we randomly assigned them to either get a mentor or not, and we've been following them now for, they all turned 20, 21, 22 recently. So we're still following about 90% of them. So, yeah. So these are some of our primary goals, but I won't go through all of them. But the point is here is, it's nice to have goals if to help guide where you're going. So, important to have that destination. So we got another one, another slide.
No, I think
No, that's it.
Is there anything else you would like to share specifically?
No, that's it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right. So we'll use the same sort of framing to now look at Mentor Together's program, Mentor to Go. So broadly, just briefly recapping the two theories. The developmental theory that talks about what are the processes or what are the situations in your life that get you to, or that could lead you to be in a disadvantaged position or cause the issue that a program is trying to resolve. And a change theory, which is our theorization or the, just vocalizing how are we going to cause this change, right? So we'll just talk through how Mentor to Go came to be. And I think it seems broadly like the group is primarily women. So this may be familiar to all of us. We've seen tremendous growth over the last 30, 40 years in women entering tertiary education in India. We've seen GDP grow exponentially over the last 30 years as well. And typically across the world, what this means is that women in the workforce also is correlated. You should see a growth, or we do see a growth worldwide in the same trajectory. But what we see in India is actually a decline, right? So the brown line that you see is labor force participation between 1990 and 2020. So there's sort of opposite to the GDP growth, which is the green line, and the tertiary education growth, which is the orange line. You're seeing that women are participating lesser and lesser in the workforce, which is feels a bit not intuitive, right? Or it feels like, why is this happening? Should not be happening this way. And so this is sort of the context in which we were thinking about what is happening that's causing women to not participate in the workforce. We actually have parity in higher education, right? There are almost as many women as there are young men in higher education. But what you're seeing is, while there are maybe 8 out of 10 boys who enter the workforce, only 3 women end up entering the workforce, and we are seeing a big drop there, in the workforce. So this is the context in which Mentor to Go was sort of we were trying to think about what could be causing this. And we're aware of many like supply side issues, right? There's not necessarily enough jobs that are flexible enough for women to take them on. Maybe there is not enough childcare. There is infrastructure is poor. How do I get to my job? All of these are concerns maybe that have an impact across genders, but women are more impacted by these. Especially, and even things like safety, how do I, security, getting to the job. All of these things are supply side, almost systemic issues that, of course, people are trying to resolve. But as a program, we really cannot fix the security problem in the country, or we cannot resolve childcare for all women, etc. Right? So we were thinking about what are the demand side issues that we could probably resolve, right? So essentially, we looked at, like we were saying in development theory, what is the reason for the fact that there are lesser women in the workforce, right? So we've arrived at this point where we're seeing a decline in the participation of women, but why did it happen? And then we listed all these reasons why women are not participating in the workforce, though they're apparently becoming educated, which is great, right? And then we kind of identified which of these factors can we really change, as a program, which of these factors are malleable to the extent that we can have an impact on getting more women into the workforce. So out of these, we identified these three sort of issues. One's a skills deficit, meaning what you're taught in college is not what you need to join the workforce. And this is, again, it's a constraint that both men and women have to deal with in our colleges, but also that it's worse for women. And then there is the network gap, right? Again, I feel like I'm almost preaching to the choir, given I can see all these people saying yes. The thing that women have smaller networks, right? There are so many constraints on our ability to network. There is norms around who you can network with, etc. There is also, in general, let's say, almost an underconfidence with networking. There's lots of these norms that prevail that make networks for women smaller, whether they're employment networks, they're knowledge networks, etc. There's lots of things that reduce the size of our networks and the reach of our networks. And then, of course, there's gender norms, right? How many of us have not been asked when we applied for a job, when will you get married, when will you have children, which is not something that men have to contend with at all. And also things around actually having to overcome these, maybe even from extended networks, like our personal networks may have these, maybe placing some of these norms on us as women as well, which all of this put together causes women to have much difficulty in entering the workforce, as well as, even if you've entered, staying and thriving in the workforce in the long term, right? So, and there's also lots of research, sorry, stay on that slide. There's lots of research to also say that if you were to tackle these, then you can actually make a difference, right? Like if you were to fill the skill gap, then more women will enter the workforce. There's research that shows this is possible. There's research that shows that if you were to give women access to wider networks, then more women will enter and they will get paid better, because they have more information about what exists out there, etc. And of course, super obvious, if we were to change the norms, if we were to get champions of more, non-restrictive gender norms, then of course more women will enter and stay in the workforce. So we decided there are several other things, obviously, that as a program one could do to resolve the issue of lesser women in the workforce. But these were the most compelling, with evidence for Mentor to Go, to say, okay, these are the three things that we are going to address through our program, right? Like I was saying, there is evidence to say that these things, if you change these things, then the outcomes will improve. And also there's evidence to say you have to sort of address something on multiple levels. Doing just one thing isolated may not necessarily give you the results that you need. Like we could have said, we'll do only skills, for example, but if you don't do the other two, then your impact on getting women into the workforce may be lowered. So we said we'll do all these three, which we think are the most, and research says it's the most effective way to get more women into the workforce, right? Can you see the next one? So this is broadly what our the Mentor to Go digital mentoring program does. One of the important things to note also is that it's a fully digital program, meaning women are able to access mentors who may be really far away from them geographically. You're connected to them via an app, and then you speak to them, etc. So we are expanding the network quite widely, quite quickly. And also because now in India, the cost of mobile data, etc., is declining, so the access is just improving, right? Though there is a gender divide with how many women have phones that are exclusive to them, as well how many women have the ability to purchase data. There are divides there, but it still appears to be a good way to access lots of women. The program actually works more in smaller cities, in tier 2, tier 3 towns, connecting them to mentors who may be in the bigger cities that you may not have had access to. Did we have to think about this in person, right? So digital mentoring kind of makes the world kind of smaller and gives you access to mentors from various parts of the country. And because it's a one-on-one for the most part matching, what happens is that you can start with your mentor at the level that you're at currently, right? So you say, hey, I have difficulty with interviews, and your mentor will start with you where you are and try to get you to find the skills that you need or build the skills that you need to enter the workforce reasonably. And then, of course, the networks of opportunity itself, right? Because you're not just tapping into the mentor, but also the mentor's social capital, their networks, etc., that could give you information about what jobs exist, how do I, what certifications can I do to get a slightly higher paying job, what is, what is the gap between what colleges taught me and what the world of work needs that I need to bridge, right? So these things from people who are in the career domains that young women are interested in. So we work primarily with young women who are in higher education, so either year 2, year 3, year 4 of your degree, and then is to transition them into the workforce. And of course, having a role model who is championing gender norms, who's championing egalitarian gender norms, right? Like saying, go into the workforce. These are the things that you can do. These are jobs that are available. Go for it. So these, and which may challenge the sort of the norms that exist in your immediate social circle, but just having someone tell you that, hey, you can change this. We found actually quite a strong impact of role models on young women trying to enter the workforce. So yes, so that's our journey from how we identified what the constraints are for women entering the workforce, which ones can we tackle, and that's what we're tackling. Yes. Okay. Yes, we're now open for anything to Mark, anything to me. Yes, someone. Oh, is the mic in?
Hi. My question to both of you. How do you find mentors and how do you keep them committed? And second question, what's a good ratio of mentor-mentee, especially with the younger kids? And so yeah, basically these two.
We actually have very different models. So Mark, you want to start with the professional mentor? Okay. So, sorry, like I was saying, we have very different models in the two programs. Mentor Together, all our mentors are volunteers, and primarily accessed through corporate partners. So we partner with organizations and ask them to send us mentors who are their staff, and they sign up, we train them, and then they go through a fairly structured curriculum of what to mentor, and that's our process. How do we get them to stay? They enjoy it and they stay usually. But it's also, it's actually a good question around keeping them, which is a challenge because we know how busy lives get. And another interesting thing we actually find is that we actually have lesser female mentors in our pool than we have male mentors. It could be very well just a representation of the workforce, right? Like there are just lesser women in the workforce, so there are lesser mentors in our pool. But we also find that it's maybe a question of having to make time for it in the middle of everything else that you have to do. But what we do is we try to give them as good an experience as possible during the mentorship, and hopefully that has them coming back. We actually have some mentors who've been with the program definitely for the last 5 years, that is digital. But before that, we used to do a face-to-face program, and some mentors have been through more than 10 years, have done several cycles of mentoring. So I think it's about them enjoying the experience.
Great. I have my next question. So,
Sorry, just one sec, let's just mark.
So we're having these two programs because they are so different from each other. So in terms of the Friends of the Children program, one of the reasons it was developed as a professional mentoring program is in the United States, volunteers for mentoring often are white, middle-aged, middle-class women. And a lot of mentoring programs are targeted at children who are in difficult circumstances. And in the United States, that includes not only white children, but people of all races and ethnicities. And so it's very difficult, for example, to get a volunteer African-American man in a volunteer mentoring program. So that's one of the reasons this program decided to hire people, because another difficult thing in mentoring programs that are specifically focused on lower income or distressed neighborhoods is that it's often difficult to get mentors from those neighborhoods because everybody's working so much and they don't have time to volunteer. So the idea was, well, hey, if we make this a job, maybe we can get people from the neighborhood, and maybe we can get a more diverse workforce, men and women, people who are of all races, etc. So that has been a successful endeavor, but obviously your ability to have an impact on a large number of people is reduced when you make a decision to hire. But on those lines, they have decided, and I didn't create this program, I'm just studying it, but they did make a decision that they wanted to focus on children that were really facing extreme challenges early on, and it's more difficult to be a mentor to those children. And so if you hired people, you could then train them and provide them with the support and supervision because they're part of your workforce in a different way than if there's volunteers. So the program that I'm talking about, they try to recruit people who either were from the community or grew up in the community and left and would like to come back and serve their community, who went to college, who studied topics that are of relevance to working with children, so often psychology or social work or sociology or something like that. And so it's two very different kinds of models, and the professional mentoring model is very rare in the US, but it is an interesting one because it has found a way to solve some issues, including how to diversify your workforce, how to provide role models that have come from the same place as the kids that you're working with and look like the kids that you're working with and have a different kind of understanding of the community than if you grew up in a suburban middle class area outside of New York City. So in the study that I'm doing, it's taking place in the middle of Manhattan in New York, in Harlem, in an area of Harlem that's quite distressed. That's the traditional African American community in New York City. In Boston, again, in a neighborhood, traditional African American neighborhood that's quite distressed. And then all over Seattle and Portland, Oregon, where there's people of all races who are living in cities that are quite prosperous but are really dealing with economic struggles and having difficulties. So anyway, it's a different kind of way, very different than the Mentor to Go model. But what has kept people to stay is that this program only hires people that at least are willing to say, I want to do this and I want to stay at least 3 years. So the program goes on for 12 years, and the typical mentor stays 3 to 5 years. So in the course of a child's life in the program, they'll have between 2 and 4 mentors. In the study that I'm doing, only 5% of the children had the same mentor the whole time, but they did have the same mentor the whole time, which is kind of amazing for 12 years. So anyway, it's not that everybody stays the time that they commit to, but by only hiring people that are at least willing to say, you know, I really want to do this, I think I can stay for 3 years. That's who we hire. So.
Great. I can go with my next question. So this question is for you, I think for both the program. So I have been in the implementation career, and I have been implementing same kind of program for women in medicine, for the mentorship program. I'm just curious about understanding while implementing the both program. I think Dr. Mark has already covered the challenges that he has faced. I'm more interested to understand what kind of challenges Mentor to Go has faced while implementing these kind of initiative, and how did you navigate through it?
Well, I won't say we've figured everything out. Just starting off with, I don't think we've figured everything out. We still have, we still encounter some challenges. I think the first most important, like almost hurdle that we have to cross is for young people to actually know this is going to be valuable, right? Because I think given the kind of colleges, etc., that we go to, young people are yet not thinking about their career. If you were to speak to a second-year engineering student, they're not yet actively thinking about their career. So for us to tell them, hey, this is a program that you can be a part of, that will help you figure this out for the long run, and for them to see value in it at the first instance, I think that's probably the first challenge. And we've been trying to sort of resolve that on many fronts. That a conversation on mentoring needs to be more spoken of, right? And as part of the research that I've been doing with the Mentor to Go program, I've been speaking to some of our young mentees, a lot of our young mentees, some who've successfully completed the program and some who've dropped out at various stages. And you realize there's varying degree of understanding of what mentoring can do to help me. And people who finish the program definitely know the value, right? So part of our challenge is to make clear or make explicit at the beginning and get them to understand what the value of this is. And I think, of course, there are challenges because it's a digital program. There is less challenge of logistics, etc. But one of the challenges we do encounter is the unreliability of the access itself sometimes, right? Like, I have a shared device. So when I had scheduled my call with my mentor, unfortunately, my phone had been taken away for something else and I could not do it. So some of this scheduling concerns do come up with our young people because, and more so with young women, because the device is not their own, let's say, right? And I'm not sure that we've done anything to resolve that because honestly we cannot do anything to resolve it, but we're trying to get more things to be available offline. Now we have something that you can access not via an app, etc., so that even if you don't have your device at the moment, then you can still have access to resources. If you don't have data at the moment, you can still have access to resources, etc. What other? There's a few Mentor Together people in the room. Are there any other challenges I should speak of? Well, I actually can't think of any. I think just one of the other things is, I think, convincing governments that it's important to do. And we've had recent success with government of government of Karnataka, where the DCT wants to make it a program that's available across their colleges, so which is great. So I think it's about 500 or so colleges that will have access to a mentoring program. They have their own mentoring program as well. So I think the primary thing is for us to get this into the mainstream a bit more. There's a lot of focus on skills, but we should also focus on the value of mentoring for skill enhancement is what I would think. Yes.
Hi.
Yes,
Hi.
to me?
So, yes, to you, ma'am. So, actually, I run an NGO in Kochi called Mind Empowered, which deals with mental health. And we have some housewives who train childcare institutions and also destitute women and things like that. So, when you said that you train corporates, right? Is there any scope of actually, because what we do is, like you said, why do women not go for the workforce is because they have small kids, but they might be computer engineers who are sitting at home. So right now what they do is they go to government schools and they teach there, at least through our organization, right? But we don't have like a structured thing because they are also not teachers. They are,
correct.
Yeah, but they want to share their knowledge for 1 or 2 hours.
Amazing.
So I just wanted to understand, like, how do you, like, because you have a corporate module, so how do you make it suitable for housewives? Is that a scalable thing? Because I'm just doing it in my community there. So I just wanted to understand how that would go. Thank you.
Amazing. It's a wonderful question, and we do, while our primary approach is to go to corporates, and that's just because it's a logistics thing primarily, right? Like, there's a lot of people we can address at the same time. That's the primary reason to do that. But then we also have a large number of mentors who are not who don't come from this channel, right? Say, for example, I was recruited from an Amazon. I want my sister to do it, who's maybe currently not working either at an Amazon or anywhere. You can sign up on our app, and all we need is for you to kind of tell us explicitly which domain you would like to mentor in or what area you would like to mentor in, and there's a mentor training, and we have a structured curriculum, so it doesn't necessarily exclude anyone from being a mentor. I think there's a very, I don't know this specific, a very small requirement of how old you should be, etc., just so that you have some life experience. But other than that, there isn't an entry barrier for people who are not working in corporate, actually. Yeah, and we do have quite a few mentors who are not currently in the industry, but either are on career break, have been before, or have just the domain expertise, and they would like to mentor. Yes, it does happen. Yeah.
Hi, my question is for Mark. So as you mentioned that there are 2 types of children when you are mentoring them. One could be on 2 extremes basically. One could be depressed and one could be overactive, right? So when we are talking about overactive students, and especially in that to gifted students, I have a question particularly related to gifted students. They possess different sorts of challenges. One is socio-emotional needs or socio-emotional challenges that they face. But at the same time, they are too harsh on themselves wherein they are basically always, they want higher level of challenges as compared to their peers. And even smaller achievements don't entice them. So what sort of a role that mentor has to play in these kind of children's lives? Because I assume it must be really very different from tackling the depressed children altogether.
Thanks for that question. I do think your example does illustrate how important it is for mentors to have mentors, that can bring to the table not only their life experience in trying to mentor children that are having different challenges, but also to have people in a mentoring organization that have some expertise that can come to the table and or find expertise, outside of the organization and provide some consultation, because I think the kinds of issues that can come up on either side of the house, the more depressed side or an anxious side, or the more overactive attention problem aggression side. It's tough. And then what even makes it more complicated, I think, like in an organization like Friends of the Children, where the kids are often engaged in activities with a lot of other children in the organization, then there's potential there on the overactive side of the house for kids to get into fights and have problems, right? So anyway, my point here is that I think it depends on each child. I guess one thing I think about as you're talking is, and my wife and I have 6 children, so I've had a chance on the ground to deal with 6 very different personalities. And with my most challenging child, I knew when that child grows up, they're going to be great, but I've got to get through childhood as a parent, and realize that the challenges that I'm facing as their parent, are that they're going to be, and this kid my child that I'm thinking of is just a wonderful adult and doing great things, but it was hard to be their parent because of various issues related to that side of the house, overactivity, aggression, and things like that. So anyway, but I think my answer is that for each child it's kind of a different situation, and the way to get a plan is to not be isolated as a mentor, but to have support from peers and have support from somebody in the organization that can either give good input or go out and seek guidance from somebody else, because I think each situation is unique. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what I would think. So.
Yeah. Hi, it's me. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Mark and Vidya both. It was a great session. So my question is actually for both of you. I have 2 questions, sorry, in advance. So the first question is, you did talk about a lot of challenges that you faced, right? So my question is specifically around the virtual model. And because a lot of, when it's in person, there's a lot of connection with the child or the youth, right? So especially in a virtual model, what are some challenges that you face with connection? It could be operational tracking for you in both terms, right? And Dr. Mark, have you, in your research and all of the work you have done, read about or researched on the differences between like a virtual mentoring relationship versus an in-person mentoring relationship? That is my one question. And the second question is, sorry?
That was already 2 questions.
One more question. Yeah. So this may be related. One is that Dr. Mark did speak about how race and ethnicity plays a role, especially in the US, right? So for us in India, Divya, do you think gender plays a role, especially because you're working with young women, right? So if the mentor is a male, mid-aged male, how does that work? This is a challenge that we have tried to, we have overcome. So yeah. Something, yeah. Thank you.
I hope I remember all your questions. I think the first thing that you raised was about the challenges of it being virtual, right? Honestly, I think there's more benefit to it being virtual than the other way around, and primarily because our young people are very tech savvy, right? A lot of our connections, even with our friends and family, is quite virtual. We're very comfortable with video calls, WhatsApp calls. All of this is now becoming one of the primary ways in which we manage connection, even with not our mentors, right? With our friends and our family. So I think the idea that the connection is in any way lesser, maybe. I can't say it's exactly the same kind of connection, but we don't find that there is a wide gap in between them. And also because one of the key things about our model is that we have a team member who's sort of supporting the pair through their mentorship journey, right? So we do find sometimes that people are not able to connect, right? They don't find the connect is not, it's not working out with the mentor and the mentee, just because they've not been able to break the ice, it's not to say that it's not working out in the long term, but it's just that they've not been able to break the ice. So then we have people to support you through that part of the process, to say, okay, we'll handhold till we figure out whether you all are going to be a good match or not. So we do support in establishing the connection, in building some kind of cadence for meetings, like we will meet so often, etc. And also, the team members are always available in case anybody has any concerns, either with time, and this happens on both ends, in the sense even the mentors may raise sometimes concerns around inability to actually connect. My mentee is not answering the phone, right? So sometimes, and our team members actually support through this process till they find a rhythm that works for them. So that's kind of what we do with, that's how we manage it. But other than that, I can't think of a challenge as such so much, There's of course those things around data, right? Especially because where we work, sometimes it's just they don't have data and it makes things harder, but yeah.
Hi. So I have
has to still answer.
Oh, sorry.
So I've been thinking about this virtual question a lot because I do a lot of reviewing of grants as a scientific peer reviewer. So last week for the federal government in the US, so last week I was reviewing a grant that was proposing to use artificial intelligence model to basically mentor, in a sense, but it wouldn't even be a real person, right? So it'd be virtual and a computer. And but one of the justifications they were making is that there's some evidence that, but not a lot yet, that virtual mentoring has value. But that literature is really emerging in the U.S. and there's not a clear answer yet, at least for youth. The AI model, I'll just have to say personally, did not attract me very much. But but anyway, it's interesting. At Mount Carmel College a couple of days ago, I spoke and a student asked that question. What do you think about AI as a way to go with mentoring? And I was not so positive. But anyway, in terms of the literature base, it's still evolving. And I think the answers aren't clear yet in terms of the comparison between virtual mentoring and in-person mentoring. But in terms of gender matching, in this program I've been talking about, men are matched with boys and women are matched with girls. In a lot of programs that doesn't happen, mostly because it's so difficult to get mentors, and often it's women matched with girls or women matched with boys. In terms of race and ethnicity, I think that there's an increasing awareness that that's important to consider. The research has been somewhat unclear on how important that is, but I know that there are very strong feelings about racial matching in the US with mentors and mentees. So there are groups of individuals that feel like that is really what needs to happen. In studies that I've done, we haven't found much difference in outcomes regardless of race. So that's all I can bring to the table on that one. But in specific communities that I've worked in, particularly in indigenous communities or Native American communities and African American communities, there in the US, there's quite a strong feeling that it's good to have your mentor be from your community. Those feelings are less strong, at least what I've experienced so far in other communities. But anyway, I think those issues are on the table and being thought about now in a more thoughtful way and meaningful way than they have been in the past, which is good, in my opinion.
Yeah, so this is actually a question for both of you and specifically for Dr. Eddy, because you've mentioned in the framework that you provided about intermediate outcome areas and long-term outcome areas. Now, I come from academia, and one of the things that we've been very worried about is we've been asked to sort of quantify everything, so outcomes have to be measurable, etc. So my question is, when you look at something like social emotional skill development or even health and well-being, are there certain measurable indicators of these outcomes? And also in terms of, are there certain program evaluation models that are used to look at the success or the efficacy of the program? Thank you.
Sorry, no, I really can't answer that. Okay, done. I can't answer that question though. There's a workshop exclusively on evaluation that Dr. Mark, myself, and another professor from Harvard are running. I think it's tomorrow. So we'll get into all the nuts and bolts of what can you evaluate, how, at what point, what tools, what approaches in that. So that's probably, yeah. And apparently we are on time. Someone just.
So we are going to talk about that tomorrow.
Yes.
I can talk with you offline about it.
Lovely. Is that, you're definitely done?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just have one last question. Firstly, congratulations on the work you're doing with Mentor to Go and Friends of the Children. It sounds amazing. I wanted to know a little bit more about, it's actually a follow-up question. I wanted to know a little bit more about how you match mentors and mentees, because I understand that there are more intricacies to like what makes a mentoring relationship work. And for example, in minority communities in India, right, there might be a lot of preconceptions, like a lot of notions and a lot of restrictions, that the mentee comes with that might be a barrier to, how they receive the information from the mentor. Yeah.
I'm going to plug another workshop. We're doing actually in this hall, if I'm not wrong, at 4 o'clock, a workshop on matching exclusively,
Okay.
which is to talk about what are the best principles that research is telling you about matching, and also to get into the weeds of what has Mentor to Go do with its matching. And just the one thing that I wanted to say, which will answer even the question that the other person asked, is we don't gender match in our program, primarily because we don't have mentors of the same gender. Our mentee pool is primarily women and our mentor pool is primarily men, so we cannot reasonably gender match. And we found, at least through looking at our program, that a gender match doesn't have an impact on, like young women matched with women mentors don't necessarily have better outcomes than across gender. So that's maybe one of the advantages of it being digital.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much.